The first time Mercy General realized Nurse Lily Bennett wasn't weak, it wasn't during a trauma call. It was during a joke. A cheap little laugh at 2:03 a.m. under buzzing fluorescent lights. One of those laughs you make when you're exhausted and bored and looking for someone quieter than you to turn into a target. The night shift has its own gravity. The hospital feels too bright and too hollow, like the building is awake while the world sleeps. Coffee turns bitter. Patience runs thin. And everyone starts acting like their worst personality is their real one. That's how Mercy General treated Lily, like she was a mistake they were forced to tolerate. She stood at the nurse's station, organizing charts with obsessive precision. Not the frantic kind of "I'm scared I'll get in trouble," but the controlled kind, like order was the only thing keeping something else contained. She was 32. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun with a silver-gray streak that didn't match her age. The skin around her eyes held deep lines that looked earned, not genetic. Her shoulders stayed slightly hunched, as if she was bracing for impact that never came. And her hands shook. Not constantly, just enough for people to notice. Enough for them to decide what she was. "Look at the ghost," Jessica Morrow whispered. Charge nurse. 5 years older than Lily, 10 years meaner. Jessica leaned against the counter with a smirk that belonged in a high school hallway, not a hospital. "I swear I dropped a bedpan 5 feet from her yesterday." She flinched like a grenade went off. A couple of nurses snickered. Somebody mimicked a startled jump. Dr. Caleb Sterling laughed too, because Dr. Caleb Sterling laughed at anyone who didn't kneel to his ego. Second-year resident. Perfect posture. Perfect hair. The kind of man who walked like the building had been built around his confidence. "She's either a charity hire," Caleb said, flicking through a chart, "or HR's little diversity trophy. Either way, she's a liability." Lily heard them. She always heard them. Not because she was nosy, because her brain was wired to catch low voices and half-muffled threats. She didn't look up. She didn't defend herself. She just tightened her grip on the clipboard until her knuckles went pale, then relaxed like she'd practiced that exact motion 1,000 times. That's what made people hate her more. Silence to insecure people feels like judgment. Jessica leaned closer to Caleb. "During intake last night, I told her to grab a 16-gauge 4. She stared at the tray for 5 seconds. 5. In our world, 5 seconds can kill." Caleb nodded, satisfied. "Exactly." Lily didn't argue. She didn't correct them. She didn't say that 5 seconds was nothing compared to the time it took for someone to bleed out in the dirt while you waited for a helicopter that might never land. Because Lily Bennett wasn't here to impress Mercy General. Lily was here to disappear. She transferred from a VA hospital in Ohio with a file that was mostly redacted, pages blacked out like a government confession. The administrator, Henderson, had skimmed it and hired her anyway. Night shift. Low visibility. Less scrutiny. Less attention. Perfect. Except attention finds you when you don't want it. The ER doors burst open, and the entire floor shifted into motion. A trauma pager screamed, followed by another. A paramedic voice cut through the hallway. "MVC. Unstable. Hypotensive." A gurney rolled in like a battering ram. Blood on the sheet. A young man's face was too pale. A neck brace. A shattered wrist. His breathing sounded wet, wrong. "Move." Caleb barked as he stepped in like a commander. 2 large bore IVs, pressure bag, type and cross, get me fast ultrasound. The room obeyed him automatically. That's what hospitals do. They follow the loudest voice until someone smarter proves it wrong. Jessica pointed at Lily like she was assigning a punishment. "You, get the IVs. And don't freeze." Lily stepped forward without a word. Her hands were shaking more now, like the room's noise had pulled a switch in her nervous system. But her eyes had changed. They were no longer downcast. They were scanning. Not nurse scanning, but something sharper. Angles, airway, chest rise, skin color, the subtle tug of fabric where the seatbelt had cut into flesh. Micro cliffhanger. Lily's gaze paused on the patient's chest for half a second too long. Caleb snapped, 16 gauge now. Lily reached for the tray. Fingers hovered. 1 second. 2. 3. Caleb scoffed loud enough for the room. Unbelievable. This is exactly what I mean. Jessica muttered, "Told you." And then Lily picked up the catheter. Her hand still trembled. yet the movement was exact. She found the vein in one smooth motion. No digging, no fishing, no josetastion. The line slid in clean, like she could do it in the dark. The trauma nurse beside her blinked. Nice stick, she whispered, surprised. Caleb didn't acknowledge it. He was too busy being angry that someone wasn't moving on his schedule. The patient's monitor suddenly dipped. Not a gentle warning, an ugly, sharp drop. Heart rhythm jagged. Alarm screamed. The nurses froze. Someone swore. Push AP. Caleb shouted. Now. Lily's eyes snapped to the patient's chest again. She didn't look at the meds. She didn't look at Caleb. She looked at the way the patient's trachea seemed slightly off-center, the way one side of the chest wasn't rising right, the way the skin stretched like air was trapped where it shouldn't be. She leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. Not AP, Lily said. Needle. Caleb turned on her like she'd insulted him. Excuse me. Lily didn't repeat herself. She reached for a decompression kit. Jessica's eyes widened. Lily, don't you dare. Caleb stepped forward, hand rising to stop her. You are not doing. And that's when Lily finally lifted her head. For the first time in 3 months at Mercy General, she looked a doctor directly in the eye. Her voice stayed quiet, but wasn't timid anymore. If you grab my wrist, she said, his lung collapses fully. Not might. Not could. Will. The room went still in a way that felt supernatural. Caleb hesitated, because despite himself, he heard something in her tone that didn't belong to a frightened nurse. It belonged to someone who had given orders while bullets traveled. And Lily's hand didn't shake when she positioned the needle. It steadied. One breath. One precise angle. Caleb's pride wrestled with panic as the monitor screamed. Jessica's smirk vanished. And everyone in that trauma bay realized they were standing at a line. Stop Lily and possibly lose the patient, or let the ghost do something that could end her career. If you were Caleb in that moment, would you stop her to protect your authority, or let her act and risk being wrong? Tell me in the comments, what would you do when someone quiet suddenly sounds like the only person who knows the truth? Because Lily wasn't asking permission anymore. She was about to reveal who she really was, and Mercy General wasn't ready for the payoff. So what happens when the nurse you mocked becomes the only one who can save the dying man in front of you? And why did Lily's voice sound like it remembered war? The needle hovered over the patient's chest like a verdict. Caleb's hand shot out, then stopped midair. His face tightened, caught between two fears, fear of being wrong and fear of letting Lily be right. Do it, the trauma nurse snapped, eyes locked on the monitor. He's tense. Jessica tried to regain control, voice sharp. We are not letting some shaky-handed. Lily didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She just moved with a terrifying calm, as if the chaos around her was background noise she'd heard 1,000 times before. She inserted the needle. A sharp hiss escaped, air releasing like a pressure valve, finally giving up. The patient's chest rose more evenly. The monitor steadied. The alarms softened into something survivable. For half a second, nobody spoke. Because it wasn't just that Lily saved him. It was how she did it. No ego, no performance, no watch me. Just competence, so clean it felt brutal. Caleb stared at her, then tried to salvage his pride. Lucky, he muttered. You got lucky. The trauma nurse glared at him. Lucky doesn't find landmarks that fast. Jessica forced a laugh, brittle and wrong. Okay, ghost girl. Don't get a big head. Lily didn't answer. She wiped her hands, checked the line, confirmed the patient's oxygenation, and moved like she was still in the middle of something bigger than this trauma bay. Micro cliffhanger. As Lily leaned in close to adjust the dressing, her eyes flicked to the doorway, like she sensed someone watching. Caleb followed her gaze. What are you looking at? Nothing, Lily said, but her shoulders were tight. The patient stabilized enough for transfer. The staff exhaled. The adrenaline drained, leaving behind annoyance and exhaustion, perfect fuel for cruelty. Back at the nurse's station, Jessica leaned toward the others. She's still weird, she whispered. Did you see her face? Like she didn't even care she saved him. Caleb scoffed. People like her want attention, but pretend they don't. Classic. Lily stood at the counter, finishing her notes. She kept her head down again, like she'd shoved the real version of herself back into a box. But the box was leaking. At 2:41 a.m., the hospital's front doors chimed. Not the soft, casual chime of a visitor. This one felt heavy, like it brought a draft with it, like the building itself knew. Security called the nurse's station. The guard, an older man who'd worked nights for years and never sounded rattled, was breathing like he'd run. "Charge nurse," he said, voice thin. "There are people here asking for Lily Bennett." Jessica rolled her eyes. "What, her probation officer?" The guard swallowed hard. "No, military." Caleb smirked, because arrogance needs comedy to survive discomfort. "Sure, and I'm the Surgeon General." The guard didn't laugh. "They're not joking. They have credentials. And they're not asking. They said, quote, 'Tell Bennett Reaper 7 is active.'" The words hit Lily like a physical blow. Her pen stopped mid-sentence. Her shoulders stiffened. For the first time all night, her breathing changed, shorter, controlled, like she was preparing for something she'd prayed wouldn't happen again. Caleb blinked. "Reaper 7? What is that? Some gamer tag?" Jessica frowned, suddenly uncertain. "Lily, do you know them?" Lily's voice came out quiet. "I hoped I wouldn't." Micro cliffhanger. The overhead lights flickered once, just a twitch, then steadied. Like a warning. The guard whispered into the phone, "Ma'am, one of them is in uniform. High rank. And there's more outside. Bariclas. No lights. Just there." Jessica's spine straightened, authority panicking. "Tell them to wait. Hospital policy." The guard cut her off. "They said policy doesn't apply." Caleb stepped forward, trying to reclaim his role. "This is nonsense. This is a hospital. If they're harassing staff, call the police." The guard hesitated. "Doctor, I think they are the police. Or something worse." Lily closed her chart slowly. Her hand trembled again, except now it wasn't weak. It was a rage held underwater, the kind that shakes the container. Jessica leaned in, voice low and cruel because fear makes bullies sharper. "So what are you hiding, Ghost?" Lily didn't look at her. She just stared at the hallway leading to the lobby like it was a tunnel back in time. Caleb crossed his arms, chin up. "Whatever this is, you're still on shift. No one's leaving in the middle of." Lily finally spoke, and the tone made Caleb's mouth snap shut. "You don't get to decide that." The nurse's station went quiet. Even the background chatter seemed to shrink away. Then the doors to the lobby opened again. Not with a chime this time. With footsteps. Heavy, measured footsteps, multiple people moving in sync, like a unit. If this kind of story, where the quiet one turns out to be the most dangerous, hits you, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Because the next 60 seconds are the moment Mercy General realizes they didn't hire a liability. They hired a legend in hiding. The footsteps drew closer. And Lily's eyes, those tired, haunted eyes, locked onto the approaching silhouettes with something that looked like recognition and dread. So who exactly was coming through those doors at 2:41 a.m.? And why did they know Lily by a call sign she never told anyone? And what happens when the past doesn't knock? Does it kick the door down? They didn't walk in like visitors. They walked in like a mission. First came two men in civilian clothing, broad-shouldered, eyes scanning corners, not curious scanning. Tactical scanning. The kind of scanning that measures exits and threats without thinking. One of them had an earpiece so subtle you'd miss it if you weren't trained to look. Then came a woman in full dress uniform. Her posture was straight as a blade. Rank insignia glinted under the lobby lights. She didn't look impressed by Mercy General. She looked like she'd seen places where hospitals didn't exist. The entire nurse's station went still. Conversations died. Even Caleb's smirk faltered. Jessica forced her professional voice, the one she used when she wanted to feel in control. "Can I help you?" The officer didn't look at Jessica. Her eyes went straight to Lily. "Nurse Bennett," she said. Lily stood. Slowly. Controlled. Like sudden movement might trigger something. "Man." That single word changed the air. Not politeness. Protocol. Caleb laughed under his breath because he couldn't stop himself. "This is insane." The officer finally turned her gaze to him, calm and cold. "Identify yourself." Caleb puffed up. "Dr. Caleb Sterling. Resident. This is a medical facility. If you're here to—" "You're standing between me," the officer said, and a United States government asset. The word asset landed like a hammer. Jessica's face twitched. Asset? She's a nurse. The officer didn't blink. She is more than that. Micro cliffhanger. One of the civilians shifted subtly, placing himself where he could see both hallways at once, like he expected a threat inside. Caleb's pride snapped back. You can't just walk in and take hospital staff. We have rights. She has rights. The officer's tone stayed level. Dr. Sterling, I am not here to debate. I am here to retrieve. Retrieve, not recruited. Please do not modify it. Retrieve. Lily's fingers curled against her scrub pants. She looked smaller than the uniformed officer, and yet somehow the room's center of gravity had moved to Lily's chest. The officer held out a sealed folder. Your record was sealed for a reason, but circumstances changed. Lily didn't take it. She didn't need to. She already knew what was inside, the life she'd buried, the name she tried to forget, the missions that never left her dreams. Jessica stepped closer, voice low and suspicious. Lily, what did you do? Lily's voice was almost a whisper. I served. Caleb scoffed. In what, the National Guard? That doesn't explain. The civilian nearest Caleb spoke for the first time, voice quiet but sharp. Stop talking. Caleb blinked, stunned by being shut down so cleanly. Jessica tried to laugh again, but it came out weak. Okay, so she served. A lot of people serve. Why the theatrics? The officer answered with a single sentence that made the room feel colder. Because the people looking for her don't miss. Micro cliffhanger. The overhead PA system crackled, then died mid-hum, as if someone had cut its throat. Caleb's eyes narrowed. Who's looking for her? Lily's jaw tightened. People I thought were gone. The civilians exchanged a glance, silent communication, like they were confirming what they already suspected. Jessica's voice climbed. This is ridiculous. She's been here for months. If she was so important, why? A low thump rolled through the building. At first, it sounded like a distant construction. Then it repeated, rhythmic, heavy, growing. The windows vibrated. One of the civilians tilted his head, listening, then nodded once. Rotors. Jessica's eyes widened. Helicopter. Caleb stared toward the glass entrance. No way. The thumping grew louder, turning into a roar. Nurses drifted toward the lobby windows like moths to light. Patients peeked from hallway doors. Even the security guard stepped back, face pale. Outside, floodlights swept across the parking lot. And then they saw it. A Black Hawk helicopter descending, rotors chewing the night, dust spiraling across cars, the ground shaking like Mercy General had been built on a drum. Caleb's mouth opened slightly. No words came out. Jessica whispered, "Oh my God." Lily didn't move. Her expression didn't read like a surprise. It reads like inevitability. The Black Hawk touched down hard. Doors slid open. Figures jumped out, fast, coordinated, moving like predators who'd practiced in worse places than a hospital parking lot. The officer beside Lily didn't even flinch. They're here. Caleb finally found his voice, shaky and angry. This is a hospital. You can't land a military helicopter. The civilian closest to him said, without looking away from the window, "You're about to learn what real authority looks like." And in that moment, Mercy General staff realized the theme they'd been ignoring. Never mistake silence for weakness. And never confuse rank, in this building, with competence. Because the person they mocked had been quiet for a reason. Not because she was small. Because she was dangerous. What would you do if you watched a helicopter land for the person you've been humiliating for months? Would you apologize, or would you pretend you never laughed at all? Tell me in the comments. Whose side are you on right now? The staff who feel terrified, or Lily who looks like she expected this? The lobby doors opened. A man in fatigues walked in like the building belonged to him. His eyes locked on Lily. And he said the words that made Lily's face drain of color. Reaper 7, you went dark. So why would a Black Hawk land for a nurse on night shift, and why did the man calling her Reaper 7 sound like he'd crossed the world to bring her back? And what happens when the ghost in your hospital turns out to be the legend everyone else fears? The man's presence filled the lobby before he even spoke again. He was tall, built like a function, not vanity. The kind of body carved by training you can't fake. His face was hard but not cruel, hard like someone who'd learned that softness gets people killed. He stopped in front of Lily and lowered his voice, but the lobby was so quiet everyone heard it anyway. "They found one of our teams," he said. "Alive. Barely. And they asked for you." Lily swallowed. "I'm not going." Caleb blinked. Stunned, she spoke so firmly. Jessica stared like Lily had suddenly changed species. The man didn't react like a recruiter being rejected. He reacted like someone hearing a soldier deny an order. "You don't get to refuse. Not this." Lily's eyes flashed, pain behind them. "I left." "You disappeared," the man corrected. "There's a difference." Micro cliffhanger. One of the civilians at the door raised a hand subtly, signal, because he'd seen movement in the hallway behind the nurse's station. Jessica, still clinging to her petty power, stepped forward. "Excuse me, but she's on shift. If you need medical assistance, go through proper channels." The man finally looked at her. Not angry. Worse, dismissive. "We didn't come here for your approval." Jessica's face reddened. "This is my floor." The officer in dress uniform stepped in, voice like steel. "This is federal now." Caleb tried to regain control. "You cannot take her. We have patient care obligations." The man cut him off with a sentence that made Caleb's stomach drop. "We didn't come here for your doctors." Silence slammed down. Because the implication was savage, Mercy General's best wasn't good enough for what was coming. Lily's throat tightened. Her hands trembled again, like her body remembered chaos even when her mind tried to stay calm. The man motioned to an operator outside. A small metal case was brought in, scuffed, dented, carried like something sacred. It was placed on the counter in front of Lily. She stared at it. Jessica leaned in, whispering to a nurse, "What is that?" "A bomb." Lily didn't answer. She didn't open it. Her eyes looked like she was staring at a grave. Caleb's voice cracked slightly. "Lily, who are you?" Lily breathed out through her nose. "Someone you wouldn't have listened to." Micro cliffhanger. The overhead lights flickered again, this time longer. Then half the corridor behind the nurse's station went dark. A new sound crept in. A soft, deliberate set of footsteps. Not running. Not panicking. Measured. The civilians moved instantly. One stepped to block the hallway. Another turned his head, eyes narrowing. The man in fatigues, team leader, shifted his stance, hand drifting near his holster without touching it. Jessica whispered, "What's happening?" The officer's eyes scanned the darkness. "We have an internal breach." Caleb scoffed, trying to force reality back into normal. "Internal breach? This is a hospital, not." A figure appeared at the far end of the darkened corridor, wearing scrubs, head down, walking slowly as if nothing was wrong. Jessica exhaled, relieved. "Oh, it's Patel. Thank God." Lily's voice cut through, low and flat. "That's not Patel." Jessica frowned. "What?" Lily's eyes locked on the figure's wrist. A tattoo, small, black, angular, glimpsed when the sleeve shifted. The same symbol Lily had seen before in another life. The figure kept walking. Caleb swallowed. "Lily, you're paranoid." Lily didn't blink. "No." The figure accelerated. Not like a nurse hurrying. Like an attacker closing distance. Metal flashed, something in the hand. Not a scalpel. A knife. Jessica screamed. Caleb stumbled back, eyes wide. And Lily moved. Not hesitating. Not flinching. She stepped into the attacker's path with a speed that didn't match her shaky reputation. Her hand caught the attacker's wrist, twisted with brutal precision, and the knife clattered to the floor. The attacker snarled, eyes full of hatred. "You should have stayed dead," he hissed. Lily froze, not from fear, from recognition, because she knew that voice. And the way the attacker fought wasn't hospital violence. It was trained. If stories like this, where the past hunts the quiet ones, keep you hooked, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Because this wasn't a random attack. This was a message. The attacker's grin widened even as he was pinned. "Now they know you're here," he whispered. And Lily's face hardened like stone. So who sent a trained killer into Mercy General dressed as a nurse? And what does it mean that Lily should have stayed dead? And if her enemies found her here, how many more are already inside the building? The attacker didn't beg. That's what terrified everyone. He didn't cry. He didn't panic. He didn't even look surprised to be caught. He smiled, like being pinned was part of the plan. An operator forced him against the wall, forearm across his throat, hands where I can see them. The attacker's eyes stayed on Lily. Still fast, he rasped. Still pretending you're not who you are. Jessica stood frozen, one hand over her mouth. A nurse down the hall started sobbing. Somewhere a patient call button chimed endlessly, ignored. Caleb stared like his brain was buffering. Ooh, who is this? Lily's voice came out low. Not hospital staff. The team leader stepped in, ripping the fake ID badge off the attacker's chest. You're in the wrong uniform. The attacker laughed through the pressure on his throat. Ive voren vers. Micro cliffhanger. The attacker's eyes flicked upward, quick, subtle, toward the ceiling vents. Lily noticed. Her hand drifted instinctively to the metal case still sitting on the counter, like she wanted to open it, like she didn't want to. The officer in dress uniform barked at security. Lockdown exits. Now. Nobody leaves. Jessica finally found her voice, but it shook. This is insane. Lily, what did you bring into our hospital? Lily didn't look at her. I didn't bring it. Caleb snapped, voice rising with fear disguised as anger. Then why are they here for you? What did you do? Lily turned to him slowly, and for the first time, Caleb saw it clearly. Lily wasn't fragile. She was controlled, like a blade kept in a sheath. Stop confusing silence with weakness, Lily said quietly. It'll get someone killed. Caleb opened his mouth to respond, but the attacker spoke first, voice slick. Ask her about the valley, he said. Ask her about the night she decided to play hero. Lily's jaw clenched. The team leader leaned closer to Lily. We had intel someone would make contact. We didn't expect it to be inside the building. Jessica whispered, Inside? There are more. The attacker's smile widened. Oh, there are always more. He shifted his weight just enough for Lily to see something in his pocket, a small device, palm-sized, with a tiny light. An operator reached for it, but the attacker jerked, fast. He slammed it against the wall. A shrill beat began. Jessica screamed, What is that? Caleb stumbled back. Bomb. Lily's eyes narrowed. Her voice stayed steady. Not a bomb. The team leader snapped, How do you know? Lily's gaze flicked to the ceiling vents again. Because he wants us to look here while they move there. The beeping changed pitch, faster, sharper. Then stopped. Silence. And in that silence, the hospital intercom clicked on by itself. Not a nurse announcement. Not a code. A distorted voice, calm and cruel, filled the hallway. Reaper 7, it said. Did you really think we'd let you retire? Jessica's knees almost buckled. Caleb's face went pale. Reaper 7. The voice continued, smooth as poison. We're going to take back what you stole. And we're going to do it in front of them. The intercom snapped off. Then every elevator in the corridor dinged at once. All doors slid open. Empty. Waiting. Micro cliffhanger. In the reflection of one elevator's metal wall, Lily saw a shadow move, just a flicker, like someone watching from inside the shaft. The team leader raised his radio. We have a second threat, an unknown location. Assume we are hostile in the building. Jessica whispered, This is a hospital. Lily's eyes were locked on the open elevators. Her hand shook again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was furious. What would you do if you realized you mocked someone who has enemies powerful enough to hijack your hospital's intercom? Would you blame her, or would you blame yourself for ignoring the signs? Tell me in comments. If you were Jessica or Caleb right now, would you apologize, or would you still cling to your pride? Because the elevators weren't empty invitations. They were traps. And Lily took one step forward anyway. So, who is the voice on the intercom that knows Lily's call sign? And what exactly did Lily steal that has killers infiltrating Mercy General? And if the elevators are open for a reason, who's waiting above, below, or inside the walls? Lily didn't look at the elevators like a frightened nurse. She looked at them like a map. The team leader, everyone called him Chief, though nobody at Mercy General knew his name, stepped beside her. We get you out. Now. Lily shook her head once. Not yet. The chief's jaw tightened. Reaper, we don't have time. Then make time, Lily cut in, voice still quiet but absolute. Because they're not here just for me. They're here to make a point. Jessica's voice cracked. Point? What point? Lily didn't answer her. She didn't owe Jessica explanations. Not after months of humiliation. An operator knelt near the attacker, checking the device. It's a transmitter. Short burst. Someone's already moving. The officer in dress uniform spoke into her radio. Sweep stairwells. Lock access to the roof. Micro cliffhanger. The word roof hung in the air because everyone knew helicopters and roofs go together. Caleb swallowed hard. Why would someone go to the roof? Lily finally glanced at him. Because that's where they can control the building. The chief turned to his team. 2 to roof. 2 to pediatrics. They like soft targets. Jessica flinched. Pediatrics. Lily's eyes hardened. They will pick the thing you can't ignore. As if summoned by those words, a distant scream echoed down the hallway. Not an adult. A child. Jessica's face drained. Oh my. Lily was already moving. Not running like panic. Moving like purpose. Like a person who knows exactly where the threat will go because she's seen the playbook before. Caleb hesitated, then followed because fear and curiosity are cousins. They turned into the pediatrics corridor. Emergency lights glowed low, painting everything red and wrong. The air smelled like disinfectant and something metallic, like blood that hadn't been cleaned yet. At the far end stood a man in scrubs holding a little boy. Maybe 6 years old. One hand clamped over the boy's mouth, the other holding a syringe near his neck. The boy's eyes were wide, wet with terror. The man smiled when he saw Lily. Hello, Reaper. Jessica made a choking sound. Caleb whispered, this can't be real. The man pressed the syringe closer. No sudden moves. You've got a reputation for fast hands. Lily stopped at a careful distance. Her voice softened just enough to reach the boy. Hey, look at me, okay? Keep looking at me. The boy stared at her like she was the only solid thing in the room. The chief stepped forward, then Lily raised a hand, stopping him. A command. The chief actually stopped. That detail hit Caleb like a slap. These operators weren't controlling Lily. They were listening to her. The man in scrubs chuckled. Still giving orders. Still pretending you're not in charge. Lily's eyes stayed on the boy. Let him go. The man shook his head. You first. Walk with me. Alone. Jessica Blurtez. No, don't. The man snapped the syringe closer and Jessica went silent, horrified by her own helplessness. Caleb tried to speak with authority. Listen, we can negotiate. The man laughed. Doctor, you can barely negotiate your own ego. Caleb flinched. Lily's jaw clenched, a flicker of anger. Then she smoothed it away. 2 minutes, she said to the chief, without looking away from a hostage-taker. The chief's eyes narrowed. Reaper. 2 minutes, Lily repeated. Micro cliffhanger. Lily's hand drifted toward her pocket, not for a weapon. She had none, but for something else, a penlight clipped inside, the kind nurses used to check pupils. She took a step forward. The man backed toward the elevators, dragging the boy. Good girl. I knew you'd cooperate. Lily's eyes went cold. Don't call me that. They reached the elevator. The doors were open, waiting, like the building itself had been compromised to create this exact moment. The man gestured with the syringe. In. Lily stepped inside first. Then the man pulled the boy in after her. Before the doors closed, Lily looked out at Chief and said one sentence, barely moving her lips. Cut the power. Then the doors slid shut. Caleb surged forward, panic overriding caution. Lily, don't. But it was too late. The elevator began to rise. Jessica stared at the closed doors, shaking. She's going to die. The chief didn't move. His face was stone. If this kind of story hits you in the gut, he murmured to no one and everyone, subscribe because you're about to see what real strength looks like, quiet, controlled, and terrifying. Then he turned to his team. Now. The lights in the hallway flickered, and somewhere above, metal groaned like something shifting into position. So what plan does Lily have going up alone with a hostage-taker, and why did she tell Chief to cut the power like she expected to fight in darkness? And if someone is waiting above that elevator, are they there to capture Lily or to kill her? The elevator ride felt longer than physics should allow. Inside, the lighting buzzed. The boy trembled in the man's grip. The syringe stayed at his neck like a countdown. Lily kept her hands visible. Easy, she murmured to the child. Breathe through your nose. The man laughed softly. Still the medic. Still playing savior. Lily's eyes flicked to the elevator panel. Floors rising. 3, 4, 5. Micro cliffhanger. The man's thumb hovered near an emergency stop button, like he wanted control over when the trap sprang. Where is it? He asked. I don't have it, Lily said. He clicked his tongue. You always had it. That's why they called you Reaper 7. You kept taking pieces of our world and walking away. Lily's voice went low. I took lives out of hell. That's all. The man's grin sharpened. And you stole something else. The elevator chimed softly as it passed a floor. Lily listened because she could hear things most people ignored. The subtle difference in tone when the elevator moved past an opening. The faint vibration that told you when someone was above the ceiling hatch. There. A tiny scrape. Metal on metal. Someone in the shaft. Lily kept her face neutral. But her body still went in that predatory way that only people with combat training understand. The man didn't notice. He was too focused on the boy. Bad mistake. Lily's eyes dropped to the child's wrist. Hospital bracelet. Thin plastic. She spoke gently to the boy. When I say now, you drop. The boy blinked, confused, terrified. Lily held his gaze. Trust me. The man hissed. Stop whispering. Lily's fingers moved, small, precise. She snapped the bracelet and let it fall. The plastic hit the floor with a tiny click. The man's eyes flicked downward reflexively. That was all Lily needed. She moved, one step inside his space. Her hand struck his forearm with a nerve point jab. The syringe flew, clattering against the wall. She pivoted, swept his leg, and slammed him into the corner hard enough to rattle the elevator. The boy screamed. Now! Lily barked. The boy dropped to the floor behind her. The man recovered faster than a normal person should. He lunged, swinging a fist. Lily blocked, redirected, and drove her elbow into his ribs. Air exploded out of him. Micro cliffhanger. Above them, the ceiling panel shifted, someone watching the fight like it was entertainment. The elevator lights suddenly flickered. Once. Twice. Then I went out. Total darkness. The man's voice turned amused. You think you're the only one trained in the dark. Lily's breathing stayed controlled, but her heart hammered. She could feel the boy's small body trembling behind her legs. Then a faint red that appeared on the elevator wall. Then another. Then another. Laser sights. Not from inside the elevator. From the shaft. Lily's stomach tightened. Snipers, she whispered. The man chuckled. They want you alive. But they don't care about the kid. Lily's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. A voice drifted down through the ceiling hatch, calm, distorted by distance. Reaper 7. Stand down. Lily's eyes narrowed into the darkness. Who are you? A soft laugh. Someone you failed to finish. Lily's hand moved in the dark to the emergency panel. She found the latch by touch, muscle memory. She popped it open. The man realized too late. What are you doing? Lily slammed her palm onto the emergency brake mechanism. The elevator dropped. Not a free fall, more like a violent grinding slide. Metal screamed. The boy screamed. The man screamed too, his confidence evaporating. The laser dots vanished as angles shifted. The elevator slammed to a stop with a bone-rattling impact. Lights flickered back on. The man staggered, dazed. Lily didn't hesitate. She drove him into the wall and locked his arm in a choke hold until his body went limp. She turned instantly to the boy. Are you hurt? The boy shook his head, sobbing. Lily exhaled one breath, then looked up as the elevator doors began to pry open from the outside. The chief's voice punched through the gap. Lily. Caleb's voice echoed from the hallway beyond, high with disbelief. What are you? Lily stared at Caleb through the opening, and for the first time, she didn't look like a ghost. She looked like the reason people survive. What would you do if you realized the quiet nurse you mocked could disarm a hostage taker in a moving elevator? Would you admit you were wrong, or would you try to explain away to protect your ego? Tell me in the comments. If you were Caleb, would you apologize right now, or would you still insist she's just lucky? Because the elevator wasn't the end. It was the proof. And somewhere above, in the shaft, someone had just tested Lily and learned she was still lethal. So who was the voice that said Lily failed to finish, and why would snipers risk firing inside a hospital shaft? And if Lily's enemies are this organized, what's their next move when their first trap didn't work? The chief pulled the boy out first, hands gentle despite the tactical gear. The child clung to him, shaking. Lily stepped out next, eyes scanning the hallway like it might bite. Caleb stared at her like she'd turned into a different person. Jessica couldn't even meet her eyes. The chief's team restrained the unconscious attacker. The officer in dress uniform spoke rapidly into a radio, ordering sweeps and lockdowns. And then the intercom clicked again. One sentence. Soft. Satisfied. Good, the distorted voice said. You're still you. Then it cut off. Lily's stomach twisted. That voice wasn't just taunting. I was studying. Micro cliffhanger. A nurse's computer monitor at the station suddenly flashed, static, then a black screen with a single symbol, the same angular insignia tattooed on the attackers. Jessica whispered, "What is that?" Lily's eyes locked on it. A unit that shouldn't exist anymore. Caleb swallowed. "Lily, what did you do in the military?" Lily looked at him, and the answer she gave was simple, but the weight behind it was enormous. "I kept people alive," she said, "when dying was easier." The chief stepped closer. "We have to move. The SEAL team is inbound, 2 critical, 1 unstable airway. The bird is ready." Lily hesitated, eyes flicking toward the pediatrics corridor, where staff were still crying and trying to calm children. Jessica found her voice small. "If you leave, will they stop?" Lily's expression hardened. "No." Caleb whispered, "Then why would you go?" Lily's gaze snapped to him. "Because if I stay, they'll keep using this hospital as a stage, and more people will get hurt." The officer nodded. "We can secure the building, but you're the target." Chief's jaw clenched. "And you're the only medic those guys trust. They asked for you by name." Micro cliffhanger. The word name hit Lily like a ghost because it meant someone out there, bleeding, had held on long enough to speak her identity. Lily looked down at the metal case again. She finally opened it. Inside, high-end trauma gear, vacuum-sealed supplies, tourniquets, chest seals, airway tools, field grade. Next to it sat a folded patch, black fabric, faded, with Reaper 7 stitched in gray. Lily's fingers hovered over the patch like it burned. Jessica whispered, "Ashamed now. We called you Ghost, and you were." "A medic," Lily cut in. "Just a medic." Caleb shook his head slowly. "No, that wasn't just a medic. That needle decompression, the elevator, the hostage." Lily's eyes flashed. "Stop. You don't get to rewrite me into something that makes you feel better about how you treated me." Caleb flinched like she'd slapped him. The chief stepped in, voice urgent. "Reaper, we have a window. If you're going, we go now." Lily exhaled. "Okay." The hospital doors opened to a blast of rotor wind. The parking lot was lit like a movie set, except no one was acting. Operators formed a corridor. As Lily stepped out, she paused and looked back at Mercy General. Jessica stood there trembling, tears in her eyes. "Lily, I am sorry." Lily didn't soften immediately. She didn't give Jessica an easy forgiveness scene. She just nodded once, like she'd heard it. Then she said something that hit harder than anger. "Be better," Lily said. "The quiet ones aren't always weak." Caleb swallowed, voice cracking. "I was wrong." Lily looked at him. "Yes. No teatrix. Just the truth. If this kind of story, where arrogance crashes into real competence, hits you, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Because the hospital incident was only the prelude. The real crisis is waiting in the air." Lily stepped onto the Blackhawk. Inside, medgear was strapped down. 2 operators lay on stretchers, pale, barely breathing. One had a chest wound bandaged tight, blood seeping through. The other's airway sounded like it was drowning. The pilot shouted over the noise, "We're wheels up in 30. Lily moved instantly, gloves on, eyes focused, hands still trembling but precise. She looked at the wounded operator's face. He opened one eye, barely conscious, and whispered her name like a prayer. "Lily, you came." Her throat tightened, and the helicopter lifted. As Mercy General shrank below, Lily leaned over the wounded man, voice steady. "Stay with me," she said. "Don't you dare quit now." But even as she worked, Her eyes flicked to the Blackhawk's side window. Because in the distance beyond city lights, another aircraft blinked, farther out, tracking. Someone followed. So, who is tracking the Blackhawk after leaving Mercy General, and why would Lily's enemies let her go so easily? And if they wanted her alive, what happens when they decide to take her midair? The sky over the city looked calm. That's the lie the world tells you from a distance. Inside the Blackhawk, calm didn't exist. The cabin vibrated with rotor thunder. The air smelled like fuel, sweat, and blood. Lily knelt between stretchers, her headlamp cutting narrow slices of light across injuries that could turn fatal in seconds. One operator, called Sign Dune, had a sucking chest wound sealed with a chest seal that was already failing. Every breath sounded wet. His skin was ashen. His eyes fluttered like he was losing the fight. The other, called Sign Hatch, had facial trauma and a compromised airway. His oxygen saturation was dropping. Fust. The chief shouted over the roar, "We're 10 minutes from the forward trauma center." Lily didn't look up. "I need 8. Micro cliffhanger. The Blackhawk jolted slightly, small turbulence, but Lily's head snapped toward the cockpit like it wasn't turbulence at all. She placed a hand on Hatch's neck, feeling for landmarks. Her fingers, still trembling, found what they needed. Tremors didn't matter. Accuracy did. She pulled a laryngoscope from a case, then paused. Because she heard it. A second rotor sound. Faint, distant like an echo. The chief leaned in, eyes narrowed. "You hear that too?" Lily nodded once, not taking her focus off Hatch. "We have company." The pilot's voice crackled through the headset. "Unidentified aircraft at hour 6. No transponder." The chief swore. "Can you evade?" "Not with our load," the pilot said. "Not without risking a stall. They're staying just outside visual range." Lily's jaw tightened. "They want me to be aware." She went back to Hatch. "Open your mouth. Stay with me." Hatch's eyes rolled. His breathing gurgled. Lily made the call. "I'm intubating." The chief's eyes flicked to the shaky hands. Anyone else might have doubted her, but the chief didn't. "Do it," he said. Lily inserted the blade. Visualized the cords. Passed the tube cleanly. One smooth motion. Airway secured. Oxygen saturation climbed. Doom coughed, blood bubbling under the seal. Lily grabbed gauze and reinforced the seal, then listened. Still diminished breath sounds. She didn't hesitate. "Needle decompression," she said. The chief nodded. "Again." Lily's eyes were hard. "Again." She drove the needle in with the same surgical calm as in Mercy General. A hiss. Dune's chest rose better. He gasped like someone coming back from the edge. Micro cliffhanger. A warning light in the cabin flickered, then stayed on. The pilot's voice sharpened. "We're being painted." The chief snapped. "Painted?" "Radar lock," the pilot said. "Someone's targeting us." The Blackhawk shuddered as it banked. Lily grabbed the stretcher straps, bracing herself and the patients. And then the intercom, internal, clicked with a new tone. A beep. Not from their system. From Lily's kit. She froze. Because one of the vacuum-sealed pouches had a tiny, embedded tracker light, blinking. The chief saw it. "What is that?" Lily's face went cold. "A beacon." The chief's eyes narrowed. "In your case." Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "They wanted me to bring it." The realization hit like a gut punch. Mercy General wasn't just an attack. It was a delivery. They didn't fail to capture Lily. They used the chaos to put a tracker in her field kit, and now they were following it straight to the SEAL team. The chief snarled. "Can you disable it?" Lily already had a knife out. She sliced the pouch open, ripped out a coin-sized device, and crushed it against the metal floor until it stopped blinking. But the aircraft behind them didn't peel away. Because they weren't just following the beacon anymore. They were following the helicopter. The pilot barked, "Missile warning." A shriek filled the cabin, an electronic scream that turned blood to ice. The chief grabbed Lily's shoulder. "Hold on." The Blackhawk dove. Gravity shoved Lily into the floor. The wounded operators groaned. A bright flash outside the window, something streaking past. The pilot yelled countermeasures. Flares fired, lighting the night like falling stars. For a split second, the world outside looked beautiful. Then something exploded in the distance. The Blackhawk shook violently. Lily's head snapped toward the stretchers, checking for dislodged tubes, reopened wounds. Hatch's tube held. Dune's seal held. They were still alive. Lily exhaled once. The chief leaned close, voice low. "Reaper, this isn't over. They're not done." Lily stared toward the darkness beyond the window. "I know. What would you do if you realized the people hunting you are willing to fire missiles over a city just to get you back? Would you keep running, or would you turn and end it? Tell me in the comments. If you were Lily, would you protect the team by disappearing again, or would you finally confront the force that keeps chasing you?" Because Lily's eyes had changed. They weren't the eyes of a woman hiding anymore. They were the eyes of someone deciding to fight. And then the pilot shouted, "Incoming again, 2 signatures." So who is bold enough to attack a U.S. military helicopter mid-flight? And why do they want Lily alive instead of dead? And when Lily finally stops running, what exactly is she capable of doing to end this? The second missile warning didn't just scream. It promised. It promised that someone out there believed they could take Lily Bennett from the sky and still walk away. The chief grabbed the headset mic. "Identify aircraft. You are engaging the U.S. military. Stand down." No response. Just a steady, predatory hum at their 6. The pilot shouted, "We can't outrun them. Brace." The Blackhawk dove again. Flares burst. The night flared orange and white. Below, the city lights spun at an angle that made your stomach flip. Lily locked her forearm around Hatch's stretcher, her other hand steadying Dune's chest seal. She didn't pray. She didn't panic. She calculated. Micro cliffhanger. Lily's eyes flicked to the ceiling-mounted emergency comms unit, then to Chief, like she'd just formed a plan no one else could see. The chief shouted over the roar, "Reaper, focus on the wounded." Lily's voice cut through the chaos. "I am." And then she added, "But I'm also ending this." The chief stared. "How?" Lily reached into the metal case and pulled out a small laminated card, folded, worn at the edges. A frequency table. Emergency protocols. The kind of thing you only carry if you expect to be hunted. She clicked the comms into a manual override. The chief leaned in, realizing, "You have a channel." Lily nodded. "I kept it for when the past came back." She dialed a frequency and spoke into the mic with a steadiness that made the cabin feel smaller. "This is Reaper 7, she said. "I am being engaged. Authenticate, Viper Talon 7. Silence. Then a voice answered, calm, immediate. "Reaper 7 confirmed. This is Overwatch. We have you on scope." The chief's eyes widened. "Overwatch?" Lily didn't explain. She didn't need to. Outside the window, far above the city lights, a new set of aircraft lights appeared, fast, aggressive, closing. The pilot shouted, "We've got friendlies inbound." Overwatch's voice continued, "Reaper, maintain course. Hostile aircraft will be intercepted." Lily exhaled once, then turned back to the wounded operators like the missiles were just weather. She checked Hatch's tube. Still secured. She adjusted sedation to prevent bucking. She monitored Dune's oxygenation and blood pressure. She moved with the same quiet precision Mercy General had mocked, only now nobody was laughing. Because now that quiet competence was the difference between life and death at 3,000 feet. Micro cliffhanger. The hostile rotor hum grew louder, then suddenly cut sideways, as if the aircraft had been forced to bank hard. A flash outside, like lightning without thunder. Then a second flash. Overwatch's voice returned, satisfied. One hostile down. Second retreat. The chief let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Holy. Lily didn't celebrate. She didn't even look out the window. She kept working. Because true strength doesn't need to shout to be heard. The Blackhawk stabilized and pushed forward. 10 minutes later, they hit the Forward Trauma Center's landing pad. Med teams ran in. Stretchers rolled out. Commands snapped. Doors slammed. The world turned into pure medical urgency. As Lily handed off Hatch, the operator, still barely conscious, grabbed her wrist weakly. "Reaper," he rasped. "Thought you were gone." Lily swallowed. "I tried." He shook his head faintly. "We don't get to disappear. Not from each other." The words hit Lily harder than any missile warning. The chief stepped beside her as the med teams disappeared into the facility. "You saved them." Lily stared at her blood-stained gloves. "That's my job." The chief's voice lowered. Mercy, General, all those people, they treated you like you were nothing. Lily's eyes flicked up, tired and clear. That's how the world works. Loud people take space. Quiet people take blame. The chief nodded slowly. And tonight, you took control. Lily didn't deny it. She looked out at the night beyond the pad, where the city glowed in the distance. Somewhere back there, Mercy General's staff were probably still shaking, replaying every joke, every insult, every smirk. Jessica would remember calling her a ghost. Caleb would remember saying, lucky. And maybe, just maybe, they'd learn the lesson that should have been obvious from the start. Never mistake silence for weakness. Never mistake rank for competence. Because the strongest person in the room often doesn't need to announce it. Micro cliffhanger. Overwatch crackled in Lily's headset one last time. Reaper 7, the voice said. We traced the hostile signal. It originated from inside Mercy General. Lily's blood turned cold. The chief's face hardened. Inside. That means. Lily finished it. There's a mole. Not just an attacker in scrubs. Someone on staff. Someone with access. Someone who helped open doors, cut intercoms, and trigger elevators. Someone who watched Lily get bullied every night and waited for the moment to strike. The chief spoke into his radio, furious. We're going back. Lily's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of storm. No, she said. You're securing your people. I'm going back. The chief stared at her. Alone. Lily looked toward the distant city lights. They used a hospital as a stage. They threatened a child. They fired missiles over civilians. Her hands trembled again, yet her eyes were steady. I'm done running. And that was the final transformation. Not a shy nurse being revealed as a hero, but a survivor choosing to stop hiding. So here's the real question. How many quiet people have you underestimated just because they didn't perform strength the way you expected? And when the person you mocked finally decides to fight back, will you be smart enough to step aside, or will you become collateral to your own arrogance?